Hi, and welcome back to this Thursday edition of Focal Point on AFR Talk. Brian Fisher is my name. Great to have you in the conversation. Honored and pleased to welcome to our decision maker line someone who's been a guest on this program before, Brian Camenker of Mass Resistance, a pro-family organization in the state of Massachusetts. And Brian Camenker working really in the belly of the beast. Brian, welcome to Focal Point, and I just want to begin, Brian, by just commending you for the work that you're doing on behalf of Judeo-Christian family values in the state of Massachusetts. I mean, you are literally a Daniel in the lion's den, and so I just appreciate so much the work that you're doing there, and welcome back to Focal Point.
Well, thank you very much for the kind words. It's great to be here, Brian. Thank you.
Well, Brian, I want to go back. I didn't initially bring on to talk about this, but I thought it might be worth taking a moment just to review the history of the gay agenda in the state of Massachusetts as it involves Mitt Romney, who was the candidate for the Republican candidate for the presidency in 2012. And I've often basically made the observation that Mitt Romney is the godfather of a same-sex marriage in the United States. Am I right or wrong about that?
Well, that's certainly probably a pretty good way of putting it. I mean, the more we find out about it, even now, the worse it gets. His legal counsel at the time, Daniel Winslow, is now running for United States Senate, and he's current state rep. And he, when he ran for state rep, was endorsed as, even though he's a Republican, by the major homosexual lobby groups because of his work in the Romney administration pushing homosexual marriage. I mean, they even recognize it, and he acknowledges it.
And Brian, correct me if my memory is accurate here, but what I remember is that the Massachusetts Supreme Judicial Council, their version of the state Supreme Court, they directed the legislature to change Massachusetts marriage law. They says marriage law, look, it's unconstitutional. You got 180 days to change this law and bring it into conformity with this ruling. And the legislature never did. And so Mitt Romney, as governor, went ahead and ordered clerks to start solemnizing these ceremonies with no legal authority.
Yeah, that's basically correct. The Supreme Judicial Court acknowledged that the current law did not allow it, and they also acknowledged that they could not change the current law. And, they basically can only rule in that case. But they said that they find the whole business of normal marriage unconstitutional, and so they directed the legislature to change the law. Now, of course, they can't constitutionally tell the legislature to do that, so that's a whole different issue. But the legislature didn't do it; they just ignored them. And yes, Mitt Romney ordered the state's justices of the peace and others to perform these, or else be fired. And many of them quit. And they had training sessions for town clerks that were directed by the Romney administration and created by the Romney administration, and he just pushed this right through. And many people around the country, many legal thinkers advised Romney not to do that. We have the documentation where they wrote to him and said, no, you don't have to do this. You could do nothing.
And it seems to me, Brian, and I've gone back and looked at the entire statute in the Massachusetts Law Code on domestic policy, and it is still against the law in Massachusetts for two homosexuals to get married. It is against the law. And clerks are specifically prohibited from performing any ceremonies that are not authorized under the laws of the Commonwealth, not authorized by the state Supreme Court, not authorized by the government, but authorized by the laws of the Commonwealth. And the law right now says you can't do it. So every time one of those ceremonies is being performed in Massachusetts, it's in violation of the law, and that's Governor Romney's doing from my vantage point.
But not only that, but homosexuality itself is still against the law. It is still referred to in Massachusetts statutes as the abominable the abominable and detestable crime against nature.
Wow, abominable and detestable. Wow, I've just been using infamous. I'm going to have to expand my vocabulary here. Detestable and...
The abominable and detestable crime against nature.
Abominable and detestable crime against nature. That is still the way the act of homosexual sex is defined in Massachusetts code. Is that what you're saying?
In every session they try to repeal that, and it never quite happens.
Well,
we always
now,
fight it.
and one thing is, and this I want to get, Brian, to what I brought you on to talk about. I've always made the point that, look, you have to look at where things are going, not just this issue in front of you, but where is this going to lead? What are the consequences that are going to flow from this once you normalize, once you legitimize, once you legalize, once you give recognition to homosexual unions, and you say that kind of sex is just fine. It's a normal variant of heterosexuality. We're going to give it the same protection, the same rights, the same whatever we do in state law. We're going to do it for these homosexual unions. We've also said, look, once you break that threshold, man-woman marriage, there's no place to stop. And you've alerted me to what's going on right now in the Massachusetts system of public education. That's an outflow of all of this, dealing with the issue of transgenderism. It's just hard for rational people to believe, but what I hear you saying, Brian, is right now policies have been issued that require girls in Massachusetts public schools to let guys use their bathrooms or use their locker room facilities if the guy is so confused that he thinks he's a girl, and if a girl complains about it, she's the one that's going to get in trouble. Is it possibly true?
Absolutely. I mean, a guy can be on a girl's cheerleading squad. In fact, they use that example in their directive, and this is just it's madness. And I testified as such before the State Board of Education last week.
Now, did this represent? So walk us through, Brian, how this edict was issued. Was this the effort of the Education Committee or whoever's in charge of education in Massachusetts to sort of implement a state law on transgenderism? How did this come about?
Well, yeah, basically over the last 3 legislative sessions, essentially since I think it was 2007 or 2009, they have tried to pass a radical transgender rights bill that included the schools, included everything. And each time we got it stopped in committee. And what happened was this past time, after it had been stopped in committee, the leadership in the middle of the night pushed it through without any debate, and the Senate did it by a voice vote. And so part of the thing says that the schools have to upgrade, can't discriminate.
Hey, Brian, let me interject just one. I want to go back to the fact this is done on a voice vote. It sounds suspiciously to me when they do a voice vote, those legislators do not want their fingerprints on that legislation.
Yeah, the House did it by a roll call, but yeah, the Senate did it by a voice vote, and that is exactly why they do it, because they don't want their fingerprints on it, and they probably knew they didn't have the votes if it was a fair, open vote. Because if these guys had to have their name on it, that's a whole different kettle of fish. And so they, you could watch what happened. All in favor say aye, opposed nay, and of course there was no sound in the room at all, and none of the Republicans, even said a word about how about a roll call vote. In fact, nobody did. So that's the kind of sleazy thing that goes on here, unfortunately. So anyway, there was this thing that says that schools can't discriminate on this. And what happened was the State Department of Education sat down with some of the most radical groups in the state, and they said, well, we're going to create a directive on this that basically goes through, elucidates exactly what schools have to do. So they created regulations, and they created this document that is insane. I mean, I could go chapter and verse. Your audience would throw up. The kinds of things. I mean, they're telling schools, for instance, that they don't want girls and boys to wear different kinds of clothes. In other words, girls shouldn't wear pink gowns at graduation and boys blue. they can change a student's name from a male to a female if he believes, if he claims that he's really a girl.
And I understand, Brian, from what you said with regard to that name change, that this edict requires students and faculty to address the student by his preferred name, whether it's the name on his birth certificate or the given name of his parents. And am I correct in understanding that the parents are not allowed to even find out about this?
Oh, and also the pronoun, by the way, she. Well, the way it works is the parents are not required to be part of the decision process. So this guy can get a letter from the gay club coordinator at school, present it to the administration, and say that where he says this guy is really a girl and he feels like he's a girl. Parents are completely out of the loop, and the school goes ahead and changes all of his records.
So the parents, if this can be done by somebody leading a gay club, the parents may never even find out about this. Right. They may not even know about it.
They may not even know about it. And I brought that up.
So on their records, so you're saying, Brian, on their school records, I mean their official transcripts and all that that information, the gender information, the name, all of that would be changed and parents would have no idea.
Right, and you can read it. I mean, you can go to our website or the Department of Education's website and read this stuff. This is what they're doing, and not only that, of course, but they have diversity training for everybody in school, and particularly for anybody that might be uncomfortable with this, where they really get down hard on them, and there could be punishments for people who refuse to go along with it.
So the student, and we know even the American Psychiatric Association still refers to this as a mental disorder. That's the technical term. It's a disorder, gender identity disorder. It's still considered to be an expression of mental illness. And so these people need help. They don't need to be enabled. They don't need to be capitulated to. They need to be helped.
Absolutely.
But the individual that's willing to speak the truth about this and call them by their given name, it turns out, are you saying they're the ones that could get disciplined by the school?
Oh, absolutely. And there's a whole list of punishments under the bullying laws.
Our guest has been Brian Camenker. He's the director of Mass Resistance, a strong pro-family organization in the state of Massachusetts. Again, Brian, go to massresistance.org if you want more information. Brian Camenker working in the belly of the beast, a real Daniel in the lion's den. Brian, sorry we're out of time, but thank you so much for being with us, my friend, and God bless you.
Thank you. God bless you. It's always a pleasure.
Focal Point AFR Talk, back in 2.